Hey everybody, welcome to the Druid's Table. We have a special episode for you because, one, we're missing my better half, Jacob. Psych, it's Kristen, but Jacob's also missing. Jacob's my better half with a beard, but another better half with a beard, Adam from the Inn of Planar Crossroads, is joining us. Thank you, sir, for coming out. And of course, Zechariah.
Audio.
Hello. We are going to be talking about some high-level play, and this is going to be kind of a brainstorming session because Zechariah's in a kerfuddle. So anyways, before we start in, quick announcements. Of course, you can support Avenue Studios on Locals and Patreon. You can find us on Rumble. If you're watching on YouTube right now, we're also on Rumble, as well as these come out as podcasts. And let's see, I have no idea when this is going to go up. So we live stream Wednesday nights as well. A lot of actual plays. And starting in March of 2023, we'll be doing kind of a themed collaboration with the Inn of Planar Crossroads, where he'll be doing Around the Hearths on a theme for each month, and we'll do some live plays on our off Wednesdays from our Pathfinder games. So keep your eye out for that, Wednesdays, 9 p.m. Eastern. And yeah, that's pretty much it for now, since I have no idea when this will be public, but hello people out there in the future. Hope you enjoy it. Before we begin, well, Adam, why don't you do shout-outs? We'll do shout-out at the beginning.
Well, for the Inn of Planar Crossroads, let me see. Since we don't know when this is coming out, and we're entering into a place not only of sight and sound, but of mind.
It's true, though.
It is technically true. I would say that we would probably have... I'm still working on website stuff, so I don't know about that. But the normal things that you would do, you find us on YouTube and Rumble and BitChute for the Inn of Planar Crossroads. You can also support either of us through Patreon or Locals. The Inn of Planar Crossroads also has a subscribe star, or you can just contact us directly, and we can handle any type of support you want to do that way. And that gets you access to both. If you support the Avenue Studios, you get access to their Discord. If you support the Inn of Planar Crossroads, you get access to ours. So there you go.
Perfect. All right. Shall we clink and drink and begin our discussion? Skål.
Skål.
This was going to be Jake's. Life is full. All right. I think then, Zechariah,
You must present us with your conundrum.
Yes.
So that it may be solved.
Sure. So, my play group used to oscillate and play between level 4 and level 8 Pathfinder. And I got years and years and years of playing up there, and we get to level 8, things would start petering out. We start thinking of different stories we want to run. And on a couple occasions, though, we decided we really were going to play something up through level 20. But those always prove to be very challenging. I'm currently in a campaign where we're playing higher levels, running characters that are 13 and 14, and because of little bonuses and things that, game masters give along the way, are probably effectively level 16 characters. So the challenge that I'm running into is the time and resources it takes to make good threats that are stimulating, engaging, and on level with my level 16 effectively characters. Because if I'm going to take the time to make a 16 level character for them to fight, that's going to be a good hour of work, maybe 2 hours, because you're going through all the feats, all the talent trees, all the races and things, and sometimes the backstory makes it intuitive and natural to kind of say, yeah, I want to grab this thing and that. But if you're going with someone that's complicated and has the backstory that I like for my games, they're probably going to be multi-classing, and they're going to have had adventures, and what equipment have they found along the way, and it becomes a lot to try and make something. And then that's just one character. That's not even a boss. It's just one person on par with one of my guys. If I'm making 5 of those, that's a whole weekend. And then along with that, you know, it's really hard to balance it. There's no way of knowing going in through, because not having a lot of experience playing high level games as either the player or the GM, it's hard to know, does this even remotely balance out? Are they just going to be crushed? Do I know enough about the gameplay to make their strategies effective? They might not even feel like level 16 characters if all they're doing is just gunning and shooting and just have really high numbers. So I guess my question then is, how do you effectively engage high-level players with high-level challenges?
Okay.
All right.
You want me to start in, or?
Yeah, well, you had started to talk off camera, so yeah, go for it.
All right. So, first, if you not knowing when this comes out, I will say when the chat about low-level play came out. Low-level play chat came out, should be November of 2022 on the Inn of Planar Crossroads. You can go back through, and I have all of our Around the Hearths arranged by Around the Hearth name and then year that it came out in parentheses. So there's playlists for each of those.
Correct.
Go back to
Card
2022.
above.
Yeah. Go back to 2022, look up telling epic stories at low levels, or however I titled that. You'll see it in there. It's November 2022 is when it came out. Some of the suggestions that were done there can be carried forward. We pointed out in that chat that threats, whether low level or high level, all boil down to whether you're going to die or not. So there is that. The idea of the stories being epic, no matter what level you're at, is because the most epic thing that can happen is you end up dying. That's the most important thing to your character, is to live on. Otherwise, it's not going to continue to be a character. This is barring self-sacrifice and stuff like that, like just general play.
It happens from time to time.
Yeah, time to time. But carrying that forward, and then also the ideas that I've been using in the Adventure Academia group, I think could be beneficial for this discussion. Because a lot of the time what happens in high-level play is rocket tag, where you've both got rocket launchers. You're so strong, you both have rocket launchers on either side,
right,
and you're just shooting the rocket launchers, and whichever rocket connects first, that one wins.
That is actually the resolution of the last session that we have was one of our heroes literally just fired missiles at a high level character that I had put hours into, and they missiled them down. So
That's hilarious.
They got to use a couple of maneuvers. Otherwise, though, what I could have done was penciled it on the back of a napkin. What they were, and it probably wouldn't have come off differently on screen. That's not good prep, and it's not what I put my heart into. But I wasn't going to take it away from a player by just saying, you can't missile them to death. No, you totally do that.
Right. So the rocket tag problem is there. That idea that whoever hits first wins. And ways to get around that is, you're not necessarily going to be able to outbalance it, but what you can do is make that not the only enemy they're facing. And I don't mean add in more bad guys. I mean layer actions. Make things happen in the world around them. What I've been doing in the Adventure Academia is usually they have a story that leads up to mini boss, and then the next season leads up to the main boss. So this last time, as of recording, as of 2022, this last time they fought up to the mini boss, which was a moss goblin, a mutated nightshade goblin, I should say. That was season 1. Now season 2 has ended with them fighting Grum. And in between this, I learned something that I'm going to continue to apply. In the middle of season 2, I put a mini-boss. which had a layer. And in that layer, different actions would come up. At first, with this mini-boss, I just put in a layer action when it seemed appropriate. I had them roll one more initiative, basically, or something like that. And then it would come in. And it would stay in the initiative that way. But I didn't much care for that, because it only gave one more action, perhaps. And I still had to play around with how I was running the boss to give the kids a nice, fun thing to do. By the time I got to Grum, I was like, I think I know how to fix this. So, I'm a big fan of using challenge events within getting from point A to point B with your baddies. So challenge events makes them use things that they wouldn't necessarily use in combat, or that they would use in combat, but not in the way that they have to use now, to perhaps escape a falling rock, or to move through things, or to do things to get out, or to get to where they're going. So challenge events work really well to help challenge high-level characters, because then, like you're mentioning Pathfinder specifically in this reference that you're giving us.
Star Wars Saga, so it's actually it's analogous though.
Okay, so to use that analogy, then in Pathfinder, you have your survival and other roles that don't usually get rolled in combat, but you can use those to escape certain things, or to make progress in this challenge event. And everybody's rolling in this challenge event, so people aren't going to feel left out, and you can even have the initiative order stay. And just I like to roll initiatives at the start of the session. At the start of any session, I say roll initiative, so that we can just have them there if anything happens when I'm running campaigns. So that's an option you can have, so you can enter initiative whenever you want to. Or you can just have it there as a safety net to let you know, okay, guys, if I call on you all to do something, this is who I'm going to look at first. It also lets your players have that. Use those challenge events, and then after you've got the challenge event, and they are to the person to where they need to fight, what I did is, because there were 4 players, I had them each roll a D12. And I took those results. If there was one right after another, I kind of said roll again, and they don't need to roll the same number. So you're spacing it over 12 turns. If 2 people go, and then there's a result that's a 2. So one of the players rolls a 2 on the D12. First turn happens. Second turn happens. At the end of the second turn, layer action on number 2 after turn 2. And you use that as a counter. And if you want to keep this secret, you, the GM, do it instead, once for each of your players, unless you've got a whole boatload of players, and then you can use a larger die. So, depending on how many players you have. And what this does, instead of having layer actions broken up on a specific initiative, no initiatives change. They can't track it. They can't plan for it as easy if you roll it secretly.
That's interesting.
So they're on edge on whether something's going to happen. You have tension. And this was brought up in our previous discussion too.
Right.
It's tension that you're looking for in your combats. Drama. It is not actually whether you're going to win or not. You're pretty confident you're going to win. Even if you're not, that's still more tension that you've gotten to add. But having that be something you're working and doing and planning through, makes it very useful. And whether it's open, like with the Adventure Academia class, because it's that type of class, or it's secret, you have a way to influence the battle in a way that will challenge your players more. Like the starship reels to the side after being blasted by something, blasted by another onslaught. So the gravitational forces shift to the side, and you can either leave them shifted to the side, or you can just have them make a roll to avoid that problem. And that allows things to be done differently, and you can flavor it to the different things that you would want to challenge your different players with. If you know that these 2 players are really good at this thing, perhaps it's acrobatics or whatever would be the correct thing in Star Wars, or perhaps a door closes down, if they're in a hallway, a door closes down, separating them, that's part of the challenge. And it's a quick fix if the person with the electronic skill can just pop it back open. And so they don't even have to waste it. They don't have to feel like they're wasting an initiative or an action. This is something happened outside of the turn order that breaks it, and they have to keep the tension high by saying, if you don't open this up, it will affect the battle then. And you've got to spend your turn then to open it up. But now's your chance to open it up real quick before anything happens.
Right, so clarifying too, I was thinking about this when I was listening to your academia ones. You have your D12 moments, and you were letting all the players roll something to respond to that moment. Is that correct? Anybody that's going to be affected. Fair enough. Yeah. Okay.
So in the Adventure Academia one,
a separate moment within the combat initiative almost, because people get to respond.
And this is actually a way you can bring more narrative into a crunchier game.
Right.
Like Pathfinder. You can have this moment and this moment and this moment set aside. And you don't have to, it's not like you're cheating, because you're not taking initiatives from anybody, but you are asking them to, you're upping the challenge. Because by the levels you're talking about, the players are going to be, hopefully, at least a little familiar with your system that you're running in.
Right.
So you're not going to be able to challenge them in a mechanical way that they might not anticipate. That's the whole point of the characters they've built. They've built into something that is mechanically sound. Otherwise, they wouldn't have survived, most likely.
Right.
So that's not the problem. That's not the challenge that needs to be done. You're not going to be able to challenge the mechanics, but you can challenge the player and the character instead. So you can challenge either the player side with making them solve something, or you challenge the character by playing into their flaws or tactics that they usually use. You as the GM know they usually use, and say, you might have to switch that up, or how will you tailor your strategy? Or what would this character do to tailor or to do something to change with the outcome?
I really like there's a lot of options there, because I was thinking just generally, and I speak from a lack of experience, so this is total brainstorm that I'll try later when we get there in Bomb Squad and stuff. So I had a couple of thoughts. I like the not knowing when it's out of the turn order sort of thing there, and then the response with the challenge event. I love challenge events too. I really, that's such a great mechanic. But what I was thinking too with that, let me see if I can get my thoughts together. What was I thinking? Oh, with that, just thinking of just the basics of, like, if they do poorly, since they have the ability to respond and roll, if they're doing poorly, one of the things they could be losing is their turn in the order, because now they have a choice to do, am I going to attack the baddie, or am I going to use my action economy on my next turn to deal with the problem now that I haven't successfully quickly. I'm thinking of that door example. So losing some action economy really would hurt. I would think would hurt even a high level player if you can be wasting that, because now time almost becomes a resource that could be threatening.
Because with the door analogy, like, opening a door should be a piece of cake by rules as written with any system, right? Our characters are so high level that any even locked door, if you're not breaking into, like, the space vault bank, right?
Right.
It should just be an open thing. But if you throw it into initiative as a surprise, and you give this high level character a chance to, like, hack a door, like, in 2 seconds, right? Then it could be like, okay, the DC for that should normally be like 15, 20, but to do it without it interrupting your turn, you got to make like a 30. Right. Because you're doing it, you're literally just being like, no, I know there's a counterman within half a second of a door closing that allows it to jerk back open.
Yep.
And then that feels stronger. You're not accomplishing something bigger but faster.
Right. Which would also make it rewarding too if you succeed.
Right.
Because that's even beyond what you would potentially normally be able to do in rules as written.
Or you jump through faster because you make an insane acrobatics roll and just like, no.
Right.
Every hero does that. That's terribly exciting.
Yeah, right, yes. I like that. The other thing I was thinking about was the other resources that you could be depleting. like I tend to think in terms of open legend just because I'm most familiar. So the lethal damage is always a nice thing to have in there because then that stops them from being able to heal up. But I'm curious if there's something in the Star Wars system where they could be expending some kind of resources that would weaken them in some way if they're doing poorly in those challenge events.
Yeah, there's also a condition track bar that tracks down. And it's always
That's right.
That scale doesn't change no matter how high level you get. There's like 5 levels of that before you're incapacitated, and it doesn't matter if you have 150 hit points. You can go down that track fairly quickly with some of the mechanics, which helps
could
with
change the battle against your pre-built baddie.
Which helps with one of the other challenges of high-level characters is when does a blaster to the face not matter?
Right.
Because right now, short of starship weapons, there is no gun or weapon that can actually kill the players. They could stare an E-Web autocannon in the face and tank it for a round. Right. Many of the characters, even with a crit, could actually just stand there and take it. Now, would their character ever do that? I'm like, no, that's stupid.
Right.
But it breaks the immersion.
Don't tempt your players not do something stupid.
Right. But like mechanically they could sit down and look at that and say, well, healer will get to me. I can handle this.
Right.
And it's
not if the healer's on the other side of the door.
True.
Right.
True. But the idea of how do you make something like that still matter? How do you build the tension of, someone gets the drop on you and has a blaster to your face? It's like, am I going to rule that if they do say something stupid and tempt the person to shoot, that they're just going to die, which should be realistic, but terribly unfair? Because let's face it, the point of a gun is that you can make it unfair.
To be clear though, your players, your characters are so powerful that they also are terribly unfair.
True.
Terrifyingly unfair. So there are other ways to be as terrifyingly unfair as the GM that aren't necessarily fun. That's why we don't suggest them. You don't suggest just being mean as the GM and saying, up, you're dead, or something. Like, rocks fall, everybody dies. Nobody likes that. Nobody likes rocks fall, everybody dies. So,
unless there's a really good story leading up to that moment.
Oh, like holding up a starship with the Force?
Yeah, yes.
Oh.
Easy
like
tiger.
An entire Star Destroyer? I am unafraid.
Yes, I love you. But yes. The other thing I was thinking about that we had kind of mentioned was threats to other people around them. And the one thing I thought of, actually, because you were talking about that off camera, if I remember correctly from the stories I've heard of the Star Wars game, the ship means a lot to them.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about the doors, like things could happen to the ship that could feel nearly as costly.
If you don't do something about that other starship that's blasting you, you guys may survive. What about your ship?
I don't know if there's a equivalent in Star Wars 2, because as we were talking about the example of thinking like maybe these are some weaker, the baddies they're facing might know they're not able to live up to that, but if they can infect the ship in some way to cause the players enough trouble where they can have an advantage, or at least that would be the hope.
Places where a setback is, going to have life and death consequences for someone else.
Right. And then maybe in that case you could be making kind of generic, something easy to throw together ahead of time, but it's their plan, the plan with all these different environmental situations that they've set in the hopes of, because I would think most of the time now the characters would be facing most of the time, especially big battles, people that already have at least some idea of their power level. And so they'd know they'd need to plan ahead of time to do some stuff, which could mesh well with the environmental and D12 random things happening. It's like, wait, they know. And of course, your players' play styles well. So if there's something, that could be a cool storyline too. If they're like, how do they know this is our our like go-to moves, and they're right there. They seem to be one step ahead of us. That could make it really interesting too.
Well, they've been caught on security logs doing things, I'm sure. They've been caught.
The smile.
They've, security logs, surveillance cameras. If, realistically, if someone in the Star Wars universe wants to know something about you, they can pretty well look at your flight logs and your high-tech games are kind of troublesome that way. There's somebody's watching everywhere. Whether it's a flight log, unless you're randomizing your ship ID marker, you're gonna run into problems with that.
Our players and characters are very well informed on that. We keep there's routine maintenance that keeps all the ship logs and records scrambled, and buildings usually don't. Buildings we exit usually have their mainframes disabled. So our team cleans up. They don't want that.
Well, in that you still present information.
You do.
You present information that you have the means and the skills to do so.
Right.
You present information that unless you vary your style of work, I won't say heist or something like that, unless you vary your style, you'll start to be known by your style of doing something. Like certain thieves are known by the way they steal.
Right.
They don't even have to leave a calling card. It's the fact that they don't leave anything that starts to set them apart. And you can someone with enough of an axe to grind, enough of a grudge to hold, would know this is how they did it to me. Where else do I see that? And if they're influential enough, they can reach out to lots of different connections and say, here, there's a similar thing happened here, and then here, and then here. Now it's a big universe, but
Right.
it's also points of light within a big, dark space. So there's only so many places you can go to get refueled. There's only so many places you can go. And what ships departed after this happened? Thousands of ships? That's fine, run an algorithm.
Yeah, big galaxy though, but small town feel.
Yeah.
Right.
Very much Star
That's
Wars.
good. I had another thought too of not necessarily. It kind of goes with the finding other resources you can be hurting them on. Is possibly pride. It could also be something you could attack the characters with. Like, again, going back to the ship, just because I know there's a lot of heart investment in that. If their ship got ransacked and they just can't even find, or stuff keeps happening to them and they can't get that head-to-head combat that they know they would win, as long as that group or whatever it is causing them enough trouble where it's not like threatening them. It's like someone ransacks your car and you just feel violated.
Yeah, they got very.
You're not hurt, right? And maybe just your spare change is taken, but it's like, you were in my stuff. Like that hurts emotionally.
Our group has a horrible grudge against Boffins because Boffins broke into the base. They got into our house. They took our stuff, and they hold it against them. And so it's like, yes, I guess that does, those weren't actually, those characters were under level challenges.
Right.
But it was the fact that they were in where the players felt safe.
Yes.
So it was attacking something that wasn't a mechanical attribute on a character sheet that grows. They attacked our home.
The characters felt unsafe in a safe place.
Right. Yeah.
And by extension, the players felt tension and drama.
Yep. And that could work as well with different people that they have connections with, different NPCs. If those get threatened or something, someone you always know you can go back to, or someone you've heard of, and that's something. Because I think what I'm getting the vibe of is that high-level play, and I think it's what I had said earlier, too, about how the baddies are probably going to have some idea of what they're coming up against because of how powerful these characters are, that you're getting to mastermind type level of, we've got to outsmart, we can't outgun, so we're going to outsmart. And we're going to hurt you in ways that might not kill you, but maybe death would feel better anyways.
Threats on a more cosmic level, like the players are currently very afraid of an Imperial purge that's been working their way down the hyperlane towards their home. So every decision, although it's that they have been making on how do we go on this mission or that mission, do we save this person, do we go and attack that thing, do we go investigate this, do we lay a trap for them, is all weighed against this idea of, but what if we're not home when the Empire comes knocking? How do we prep for that? Is a challenge that goes beyond a character sheet. Even though when the fight does finally come, it will be character to character. And that's been well worth the time and investment to build up those character sheets and what are going to make them feel unique. But they've been a challenge now for months of gameplay, knowing that this is coming.
And if they know that's coming, as it gets closer, the idea of being away from home, that's not so fun. And so, as it inches closer, the continuing to play on the idea of, yeah, y'all can go, but it'll be a week before you get back, or stuff like that. And if, timelines are not set in concrete, they may expect it at this time, but unless they're keeping tracks on it in real time, that may not be the case, because there's light speed travel and stuff like that. Technically, it would have to be faster than light speed travel, but that's beside the point.
It's Star Wars.
You got a nice 0.5 hyperdrive, then sure.
Yeah. But that whole situation, and you're probably already planning in on that, but perhaps there's a certain amount of variety and variance between how fast, especially as it gets closer, what week, or what month, what week, what day, because they might not know, and they might not be able to get a good idea, because if something goes really well and in the Empire's favor in this area, because they didn't go and do their job on the other place, it ups the time scale. Or because they did this job instead of this other job, it ups the time scale. Or it slows down the time scale. And so they're expecting it then, but nothing happens.
Yeah, that's cool. And I was thinking too, when you were talking about the time, that'll bring back that crunch, because I think I'm getting the vibe that as you get into that higher level play, it does have to become more narrative consequences versus necessarily the mechanical, or you have to really bring those together. And so having something like a timeline where you're really having to track how much time you're spending doing something compared to what knowledge you have. Because then I was thinking too, maybe the choices they make, they don't even get to find out if it slows or speeds it up, because of this choice, now they don't have accurate, like maybe they were accurately tracking the baddies, but they did this thing that makes them lose the ability to then track it. So now they're not even sure.
Going back to our initiative things and how their ship can be damaged, perhaps one of those rolls, the ship's scanners get knocked out and it misses the update. And you don't have to tell them that. You just tell them your scanners went out for this time. And you've got to, after the battle, you're going to have to spend time to fix that, because that was some space debris that knocked it out. You got to reattach stuff. There's like physical things that need to happen, or send out the droid to do it.
So adding a lot of the environmental factors. It's not just that they're going up against consistently higher level characters. It's like, well, where have they been this whole time? It's also about the scenario in which they are meeting characters that are at a lower level, but now they have to do it with time crunches. Now they have to do it on enemy soil, and now they have to do it with, already being wounded and pressing on, kind of a dungeon crawl effect, without it actually being a physically confining dungeon. It's a time dungeon. You only have so much time. You only have so many resources.
Sounds a lot cooler than
scheduling
scheduling conflicts.
Scheduling conflicts, yeah. Time
is that our that's our new thing? Sorry, Dan, I'm in a
Trademarks,
time dungeon.
I have no idea when I'm going to get out because time's just, it's trapped
Dan
in
is
here.
consistently stuck in a time dungeon.
Yeah, right.
I'm going to find a way to use this. I'm gonna see.
That's really
I want to
good.
work. A goal for this week is to work. I'd love to fit in, but I'm in a time dungeon. And
Yes.
Yep. Let me check my time dungeon.
Yeah. Maybe tomorrow
Well,
I'll
see,
be available
it depends.
yesterday.
Do you control the time dungeon or the
Right.
time dungeon control you? If you control the time dungeon, you're checking your schedule book.
That's cool.
You just get your schedule book, write time dungeon on the on the front of it. It's like, okay, I can fit you in. You'll go in this room of the time dungeon. That might be a memory tool. That's not bad. That's a memory. Trademark.
Trademark.
Yep.
I love that. We're getting close to time. The only other things I was thinking, just generally mechanically speaking, was on top of all of this would be, is there stuff, because I'm not as familiar with the Star Wars thing, is there different things? Oh, two thoughts I have that kind of combine together. Sorry for bouncing on it, because this kind of flows into it. Is that I liked what you were saying too about, we've all kind of been talking about the low level people being able to do something to these high level characters, which actually narratively, I think, thinking from a player's perspective, would be kind of rewarding, in that you've invested this time, your character has become this powerful that most people are under them, and they have to think of creative ways to come at them. Mm-hmm. So at a meta level, I think that could be rewarding. And then it helps with the combat, adding in all these narrative aspects. So the only other thing I was thinking about is, in that vein where there's less powerful baddies trying to get at the players, they're going to have to, or the characters, they're going to have to find the weaknesses. Mm-hmm. So outside of these narrative ideas, is there mechanical options you might have that they could target? Like, I always think, again, from my perspective on Open Legend, almost no one ups their resolve. So it's always fun to throw in a monster that might do. Yeah, exactly. Stay tuned, or maybe it's already out.
It should be already out.
Future Dan will know. Card above. But that could potentially be interesting, because then, like in Open Legend with Resolve, not everybody tends to put a lot into that unless it's accidental to the way they built their character for other reasons. And
Tips
you can do
for building an
Banes.
Open Legend. If you're going to use Insubstantial, there are ways to make it powerful. It's already powerful, but there are ways to break it. Up your resolve, stay insubstantial all the time, sustain 3,
Yep.
or you sustain however many you need, and then focus in attributes that let you target other people's resolve. And you're fine. Focus and influence. and
Right.
You're fine.
Done. But then targeting the resolve, that's also tends to be Banes and stuff, which may not necessarily kill the character outright, but you're doing things like incapacitated or fear. You're doing things that make them, again, lose that action economy. And they're weak in that spot, so it's easier for the baddie to hit, even if the baddie's lower level, just because that's a weak point. Which there probably could be both weak points to items, I'm sure that they have, or something that you could tap into. I just wasn't sure about the defenses wise, if there's something equivalent in Star Wars that you could take advantage of.
Yeah, there is. The system is a little weak in that with level, all defenses go up. With level, its attack doesn't scale with level to the same degree, but all the defenses go up. So no one has a defense that is very low and easy to target, because it does kind of passively get buffed.
Okay.
But I think that maybe scaling that differently for things like their people's weapons, because usually like an item in hand is a reflex defense of equal to the character's plus 10, so it's like those now become almost impossible to hit.
Right.
But an object sitting still just has reflex defense of 10, so there might still be environmental hazards
That could be roped into it, right.
Or not everything can be covered. You're still only one player.
Right.
Usually.
Yeah, right. And the one thing I think about too would be doing it through environmental might make it feel less like you're targeting a certain player. like at a meta level of the GM is mechanically targeting me because he knows this. So that could be nice if it's an environmental. Whoever ends up in this situation, your character lucks out and is in this situation.
And just to touch on one thing which wasn't really quite the focus because this was more from the game master's standpoint, but a good game group also helps to solve this for you. And this is one of the things that I've relied on to keep the game going, and I think it's going to serve well going forward, is good players solve this for you by imposing limitations on themselves. If they're not also if they're not min-maxing and trying to just make a busted character, and they're going more for the story, they're going to have their own limitations. Like I have a heroic character who's just like, great, I'm powerful enough now that I don't have to kill my enemies, and I can start doing, destroying their weapons and using my saber to cut their blasters in half. Is a great limitation that a character can put on themselves because they're like, yeah, I recognize that I'm this much stronger. That means I'm this much more responsible for being heroic. So that is really good. That is a big thing that you can lean into, but not every play group has that.
And I would say, shout out, be that player.
Be that player.
I love the self-limitation.
Be the player you want to see at your table.
Yes.
Yes.
That's really good. Any other?
My thoughts is, what do you do? What do you do if your system doesn't work at a high level? What happens
you don't
if
play
it? So what if you find out that you get to level 15 and the system is just busted? Your characters have it solved. Now I'm saying this is my situation, but let's say you get there and your players have just made busted builds, and you're forced into only utter extremes to even make them bleed.
I think you have to have a discussion with your player as a group then, because if everybody's having fun, it's not really a problem if you're playing busted characters. But if they're wanting to tell some stories where they feel that there will be some consequence, you just got to be honest with yourselves and be like, I mean, this is fun, guys. It's fun to be overpowered, but what are we doing with the story? Because as it stands, the way the player builds work, I mean, you can always face players against mirror matches. You can do that too.
Right.
But that only gets you so far when they kind of deduce what's happening.
Right.
Of course, you can be pretty flavorful as the GM to be like, it's a lightsaber.
There's a basic save on prep. Just take your character sheets and reflavor it.
That's their antagonist. Hey, that is a fair thing to do. I'm just saying.
Yeah. It would probably be harder in something like Star Wars or Pathfinder, although you could still reflavor it. Like with Open Legend, that would be really easy. You just because the stats and stuff are simple enough where, of course, there would be overlap in what they're rolling. Yeah, it's just reflavored. I totally built this.
Yeah,
and spent hours on it.
I
don't think that thought has ever crossed my mind. That is so funny.
Well, I mean, if your characters are going to build if your players are going to build broken characters, hey, what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Yeah, there you go. That could be interesting. 2, 1.
But you don't have to introduce them all at the same time.
Right.
Right. Well, unless you're trying to do the evil opposite team.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Fits your story.
2 back and forth.
And they would be if they got to that level. And there's still people that they think are stronger than them or higher up on the food chain, it would make sense that they would then meet others eventually that run in that high-powered circle.
Well, that makes sense.
Right.
So even if you just take their builds, see what they're doing, and just play around with them. Like, I'll take this one from this one and put it over here and play magical hats with it until you've got, these actually don't look like their characters anymore. They don't play like their characters anymore, but they're still power. They're still got the power behind them that their characters have. And I don't know, I take somebody in Pathfinder and I say they got this big, huge axe. It functions like a great sword. You can tell. You can even tell the players it's mechanically a great sword, but it looks like this huge, great axe. And the characters will just buy into it because it's true. they do that. You can do that all the time with your flavoring.
Yes.
So reflavoring either their characters or other characters they've seen, or that either builds they sent you and you rejected.
Oh,
You know,
that's a good one too.
just throwing that one out there.
That's funny.
You can't have it, but
You can't have it, but you can fight it.
One of the thoughts I had, because
But don't give them anything that they can steal.
right.
yes, any weapon you give the enemy is what your enemies are facing in the next session.
I have a high suspicion that that's how most players get their first ships.
That our group has a cycling, just cycles through ships, because we can acquire them and dispose them quite easily. But I had a situation where one of my players could take on a small cruiser by themselves, because I looked at the stats of the troopers on board, and it was a Corvette, not a cruiser, a Corvette, and it's like it has 40 to 60 stormtroopers plus officers and some droids, and I'm like, statistically speaking, there is no reason why this one elite stormtrooper character that's at level 15 cannot actually exterminate everyone on the ship and take control of it. That was literally just it, and the challenge came from the rest of the battle still going on around it and rebels still attacking it, but with a perfectly coordinated plan. And this is where the kind of limitation comes in. With a perfectly coordinated plan, our team could have just swept that entire Corvette and taken it over. The one character alone could have rationally and reasonably swept that entire Corvette and taken it alone, and effectively did. But because it wasn't coordinated with the whole space effort, it was the whole ship got disabled by the rebels, and there wasn't anything to take as a prize, and also that characters limited their goals and their motivations limited them. They weren't there to take and capture a ship for a prize. They wanted a piece of information from it, and that's all that mattered. They would take the whole ship and run it aground in order to get this one piece of information. So again, it's kind of leaning into the players do have that sort of self-limitation because they're playing a real character, and the challenge comes from they're not all omniscient, they're not all coordinated, and they're not playing a perfect game. So some of those things do work themselves out, and some of those things still presents the challenge of, well, what if you needed a boss on that ship? Well, you make a boss.
That's not me. Give me a character sheet for a second.
Let me just check your character
I'm
sheet
just
for a
checking
second. Photocopy.
Yeah,
There you go.
Snap with your phone.
All right, elite stormtrooper, level 15. Yeah, okay.
They got one of them. Hey,
Hey, what luck.
So there you go.
That's good.
Hey, well, if it's an elite stormtrooper, elite X-stormtrooper, that means an elite stormtrooper would also be the same, meaning you can start throwing elite stormtroopers at them all you want, because they would have the same type of stuff. And not be they'd be indistinguishable from, aside from their ranking, another stormtrooper.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense.
Cool. Any final thoughts? I think we'll wrap it up.
Make your players hate their builds.
Yeah.
No. As far as me, I like the playing around with the environment and the initiative in a way that is not going to derail their enjoyment. And I like making those narrative consequences really start to pay off and be important to them, because they've got a starship they care about, they got a home they care about, a home planet they care about, they've got a time frame now, so you can crunch all of those things together.
Can't be everywhere at once.
Maybe the ship,
At least in this system.
it's one of those things. Maybe the ship just needs maintenance, and that they can't go and do this job until it's fixed.
The ship is actually currently abandoned on a planet.
Oh, I forgot about that. That's the art that Chiro got, right?
Both their ships are actually abandoned on a planet.
All right, now, come on. They got to care about some ship.
Something. I'm sure there's something they care about.
They do. They
Credits?
That's great. Yeah. Crash the economy.
There we go.
I mean, it is an intergalactic war happening.
Yeah, it could really be an interesting thing.
I mean, you could play the socioeconomic game on them and be like, sure, you guys beat the bad guy, but the economy's ruined and your home planet's bankrupt and has no exportable trade goods that are useful. Well done.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
You win.
You have beaten the Empire back.
That's interesting. What are your thoughts there? Any final thoughts or?
No, I love that. I love the idea of just like tapping more into the environment, tapping more into the opportunities to like throw quick incidental things to be a moment of challenge that's unexpected, and letting them go above and beyond by doing something really fast or making a quick response, especially because in the situation we were talking about, it gave them like an extra action, which is a way of rewarding them for being high level,
right,
by getting to do that extra bonus things. Like, yeah, you're good enough to do that now, without making it like you can just like, without giving them like a new power ability. It's just like, yeah, this area was prime for you. You can easily overcome it if you're on your game for it.
I like that too with the environmental. The last thing I'm thinking about is that even though on paper, by the numbers, like that one character could take out that whole Corvette, that would still take time. And even though he's killing these 5 guys, there's still 30 other guys that could be doing other things, not necessarily
Could they not have
directly.
blasted him out of an airlock or something? I mean, at some point,
He blasted himself out of an airlock.
Of course he did.
He rodeoed a TIE fighter to get in there. He rodeoed a TIE fighter to get out of there.
However, you could present that like they could attempt that, and now he's got something cool he could do if he rolls well. I don't know. So that's something. Just that brings. I think, lacking experience, I think it brings in some reality in the sense of having these things happen, because they can't be killing all these people all at once in the same moment. Even though on the numbers side, they basically can. But there is the fact of they do have to move through this space, and things are happening as they're moving through the space that are outside their control. So I feel like that would bring some reality back in, that the numbers at these high levels are starting to push against a little bit. And then I just want to reiterate too, you talking with the players too, if it does get to this point of like, if you did approach the thing where it's like this is literally broken, because maybe that is fun if everyone's down for just let's live in this broken world. Morrowind, when you accidentally kill an NPC, it's like you can continue playing in this broken world. You've killed an NPC in the main storyline, or you can revert to your last save. I love that.
Just tell them that. Just next time they come. I don't know if this is a digital game or an in-person game.
In person.
Okay, you have it printed out, and you let them kill somebody, and then you're like, you just hold this up for them. The Morrowind screenshot.
You can continue in this broken universe. Oh, that could be a really cool start to
That's
like
how you handle
a one-shot
broken
game
characters.
Too. There it is.
When your players don't take the
You
hint.
just throw it on the table and walk out of the room for a little bit. Like, decide what you're gonna do. Call me when you're done. Well, there you go.
Thank you.
I'm excited actually to hear if you get to actually play these out. We should do another chat sometime. If you like do some combats with the environmentals or whatever stuff, whatever happens.
I'm making my own system, and I'm seriously considering adding that in as a feature of the system is the causality dice. The causality die is what I'd call it, and everybody would kind of do that if in a battle.
That's really cool. Let us know if you've tried something like that before and what your thoughts are. Throw out. I'm sure there's tons of people out there with tons of experience with high level play,
Especially if it's high level Star Wars Saga edition.
That would be interesting if you're
Let me
there.
know.
Yeah.
Man, he's over here begging for stat sheets. Come on.
Yeah.
Hook a dude up.
Hey, comment a link to your character stats. Let's beef Zech's supply up with a bunch of high level characters.
Then his players will be like, "Whoa, something
Wait
just
a
changed in
second.
the field of this game. Zach's trying to moid us."
How did he even think of this?
This
That's
isn't
actually
this
cool.
isn't something that Zach made up.
There should be.
This isn't Zach's style.
That would be funny.
There probably is. I'm sure there's probably forums or Reddits or something out there where like GMs are just like, hey, I spent all this time on a 10-year campaign. Here's all my stats for all my things I've made. Save you some time. Oh, okay. Well, let's start it now then. All right. Well, thank you guys. That was exciting. Adam, where can people find and support you?
About the same places they can find and support the Avenue Studios.
Excellent.
On YouTube, YouTube, BitChute, and well, I'm on BitChute. You on BitChute?
No.
Okay, so YouTube, Rumble, and then BitChute for the Inn of Planar Crossroads. And then to support either of the channels, you can contact us. You can touch base with us on Patreon, Subscribe Star for the Inn of Planar Crossroads, and then locals for both of us again, or contact us directly. I'm pretty sure we'd be okay with that. If
Oh,
someone
yeah.
did.
For sure.
That gets you access to either one of or both of our Discords if you support both of us. And
There's
then,
a couple of those out there.
Yeah. And that means you get access to the PDF and other special content that I believe both of us will be creating at some point. We've already got some on the Inn of Planar Crossroads under the House Specials portion, and it is a Fallout, as of recording, it's a Fallout Fort Smith map for your playing in your own games, as well as a chicken race idea for D&D Pathfinder 1E and 2E. It's D&D 5E. Pathfinder 1E and 2E Savage Worlds idea, and an open legend kind of sample build.
Yep. Yeah.
So I think that's all
I
five.
think that's what we did. Yeah.
I still haven't got art for them as of right now, but I'm trying. People, it's like, how you draw a cyborg chicken? That's right. Starfinder was one of them.
I forgot about that.
Getting the cyborg chicken from here to there is the problem.
Yes.
Because I got to be in the right mindset to do it.
Beautiful. All right, as you heard, support us on Locals Patreon, and doing so gets access to our Discord. We have some stuff as well. Jacob has a maps and assets folder for those playing on VTTs, so at a certain tier you get access to that. And of course, you just help us continue to create content, which hopefully you enjoy. And thank you so much to our supporters, both for the Inn of Planar Crossroads and for Avenue Studios. It means the world to us. And thanks, guys.
Yeah, it's almost like he's saying, this content was made possible by travelers and viewers like you. Thank you.
Clink and drink.
Clink. School.
𝒂𝒐𝒏𝒄𝒂 𝑪𝒊𝒕𝒚.